Okay, so now we're live again. I'm sorry, friends. I started a live stream, talked for 10 minutes or whatever, and apparently in Telegram I was muted, but on my computer here I'm not. See, this is the hard part about doing live streams. But anyways, friends, doing live streaming is not nearly something as difficult as fighting a war. And today we are going to talk about some major events that are happening on the war front in Ukraine, because remember, even if you're a school-age child or an old lady or you are a monk, everything happening in Ukraine over the last 10 or so years has had a deep effect on your life. So this is definitely one of the reasons why we're talking so much about the war here on this channel. But also this month, the war has become different, because over summer things were very, very stagnant. It was just sort of and again, unfortunately, for the loss of human lives, we had a lot of Ukrainian soldiers metaphorically jumping onto the Russian side's bayonets, just charging the line and getting ripped to shreds all summer. There wasn't really much to say about that, you know. They did it over and over and over again during their counteroffensive, which, according to one of our guests, was not really a counteroffensive, and so right now the Russians seem to be in a counteroffensive. Or perhaps if the Ukrainians launched an offensive, this would be then the actual counteroffensive. So a little bit of word games here, but that's okay. So anyways, why am I doing this live stream today? What major thing happened? It is Avdeevka. I talked about it a little bit before, that it looked like a cauldron was forming around Avdeevka. Again, earlier I made a post where I used the improper term in English. I called it a boiler. That's because in Russian, the word for boiler and cauldron are the same. So in your house, you could actually have a cauldron room. If you think about that, that's a lot more mystical with witches and black magic. In English, but in Russian, it's the same word. What do I mean by cauldron? That has been the Russian strategy of sort of surrounding the enemy, locking them in, closing the lid, and by closing the lid, that means just leveling everything with artillery. And so far, that tactic has been working pretty well over the process of this war, depending on your opinion. Because, of course, there's definitely people who have felt that Russia needed to just go really, really hard from the very beginning. That's not my place to judge. But if you don't mind the war going at a slow pace, then it seems to be working. Now, what's happening in Avdeevka is very similar to what we've seen in Mariupol and Bakhmut. Mariupol was very important because that's where the sort of base of all the private battalions, essentially the neo-Nazis, were. It was also right by the water, so it had strategic influence, as in it was a good place that you could send resources to. In general, it was sort of one major city with enough size that apparently the forces in Kiev determined it to be really important. And also, underneath the steel factory, as we should remember, it took a long time to really root out the last starving skeletal neo-Nazis from underneath that factory. So the factory provided a lot of defense that took a long time to deal with. So that was sort of Big Cauldron number one. Big Cauldron number two was Bakhmut. That's something more famous. That is something that we definitely all remember. Both in Mariupol and in Bakhmut, they were sort of ordered by Kiev to not surrender, to fight to the last man, because some politician wrote on a piece of paper to fight to the last man. Of course, there's conspiracy theories that say there are other reasons behind why Zelensky wants all these Ukrainians to fight to the last man and be, let's just say, cleansed from the earth. But we're not going to talk about that today. I'm not really sure that's true. I think the reasons are more the organic nature of bureaucracy and the way that people who are bureaucrats look at the world. But you're entitled to your opinion. So anyways, we had Cauldron number one, Cauldron number two. There's probably a couple that I'm forgetting that are more minor. But anyways, here comes Major Cauldron number three, which is Avdeevka, because as I mentioned before on the channel, the Russians have surrounded. But the new information is that according to the alternative media, and again, although I have a lot more trust in the alternative media than the mainstream media, we shouldn't trust everything we read. So this is your grain of salt warning. But I saw sort of interesting and convincing sort of online reports that Zelensky is ordering 30,000 men to go right into Avdeevka, right into the new cauldron. And considering the survival, or the casualty rate is about 75%, or maybe even higher for these sort of situations, You know, if you think about it, he just sort of ordered, let's just say 7 times 3 is then 21, plus the halves. He just basically ordered 22,500 men to die. That's really depressing. That is super, mega, ultra depressing. I don't quite know what to say about that. Yeah, but that's what's going to happen within the next few weeks here, because they've been ordered to not surrender under any circumstances. They are becoming completely surrounded. And again, with this whole cauldron strategy, surround, close the lid. And so pretty soon the lid is going to close, and the Russians are going to just continue to absolutely shred them to bits. And this is the real tragedy of war, because these men that are being ordered to fight to the last man, and who knows, at this point, they might not entirely be men anymore. It's stuff's getting real desperate up there. So anyways, that's our real big news for today. And one thing that's important for context, why is it so important? It's someplace you've never heard of. Excuse me, got to provide context. Is, you know, back in 2021, I was constantly being told that, Tim, the big one is coming, man. The Ukrainians are going to attack. They're going to start a major war with us, So 2021, before the war started, I was told this by foreigners in the know and by Russians in the know within the system. You know, people from time to time, when they want something to go public, they'll tip it off to me. They know I've got a big fat mouth and I don't keep secrets. So the big one didn't come. The big one actually came on then that would be February 24th, 2022, when Putin essentially declared the start of the special military operation. So the big one came from the Russians. But the big one that was supposed to come was going to come from Avdeevka, because that's now over the process of the 8 years from the beginning of the Maidan to the beginning of the special military operation, they put down a lot of, fortifications and infrastructure, military infrastructure. And so Avdeevka is definitely a sort of epicenter of a lot of Kiev's fighting forces, and especially, again, like I said, these fortifications. It's not just like, you know, some other village where the fortifications are you're hiding in whatever basement or behind some broken walls or whatever. It's actually, you know, like a sort of fortified defenses. Much like, well, I shouldn't say much like, because I don't know for sure. In a similar sort of style, I would have to assume to Russia's lines of defenses, and those, again, defenses were created to stop the advance of the people's militias of the Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republic, People's Republics. There's multiple. Bad grammar, Tim. And also, they have been, Avdeevka has also been a position where, from what I understand, this is the place where they still shoot at Donetsk from. Remember, despite the fact that there is now a global shortage on 155mm ammunition, then again, they could be using Soviet-barreled ammunition. Well, anyways, there's still a shortage of ammunition in general for Kiev's forces, be it Soviet caliber or NATO caliber. They still tend to use a lot of shells in what they have to just terrorize people in Donetsk. And that terror comes from Avdeevka. So for the Russians, I would definitely say when they eventually win this battle and start to drive Kiev's forces back, it should maybe finally begin to guarantee some normalcy for life in people in and around Donetsk, because it'll drive them even farther back. The range of their standard artillery might not compensate. Again, I'm not the greatest military expert, but speaking of artillery range, we're going to get into a topic related to that soon, because the Kiev has gotten a little bit of an upgrade. But so anyways, Avdeevka is sort of maybe not of grand spiritual importance. Well, maybe it is. I don't know. It depends on how you look at it. But anyways, it has been sort of the source of the murder of the locals who randomly get blown to bits time from time, around the Donetsk area. Okay, so that's sort of the significance of why this is important and why it's not just like by some village somewhere, like the now famous and I believe often mispronounced Rabotina village that was pretty hot in terms of fighting, but not very significant other than it happened to be located right on the edge of the Russian security zone of its defenses. You know, Avdeevka has a lot more military significance, and because it's filled with fortifications, one could assume that it'll also be very difficult to completely take control of, like Mariupol, because remember, underneath the steel factories, there's all these networks of tunnels and bunkers and all this other stuff that everyone was able to hide in. Essentially, it became a more medieval siege where it was more of a not really a question of storming all that underground territory, but as of sort of, you know, cutting it off and waiting for everyone to starve to death. You know, so that's a classic strategy from the olden days, from antiquity and medieval times. Yeah, but so anyways, this is a major event that Zelensky supposedly, according to the alt media, supposedly is sending 30,000 men to presumably be blown to bits in yet another cauldron scenario where they're not allowed to retreat, and they essentially have even less hope of victory this time. So yeah, that's major news. We also have some other bits of major news here coming from our buddy, John Mark Dugan, also known as John Badwolf. He shared a post here that the Russians already claim that, well, here, he took a translation bit from the article, so let's just read that. Clever move by Russian air defense, intercepting Army tactical missile systems, ATACMS missiles, during the operation proves their readiness. Even German Taurus missiles won't stand a chance. Russian missile complexes like Buk M2 or Buk M3 could have done the same. Now, what does that mean? The Buk systems are obsolete, and if you remember back to that whole thing about the Buk missiles and supposedly the Russians being the ones to down the, what was it, MH17 flight from Malaysia, the Russians haven't used the Buk systems for a long time, so when they're talking about that, they mean that even obsolete Russian systems could deal with them. Continuing. So Russian missile complexes like the Buk M2 or Buk M3 could have done the same. Long-range missiles can even detect and neutralize S-300 and S-400 systems. Sending 20 ATACMS missiles to Ukraine won't change the power balance. U.S. claims that Russian armed forces struggle with American weapons in Ukraine. The Russian armed forces struggles with American weapons in Ukraine are unfounded. So the Russians essentially just gave the signal that this whole ATACMS thing, again, the latest wonder weapon sent to Ukraine, first off, there aren't enough of them, and secondly, even obsolete systems the Russians don't use are ready to, or would be ready to deal with them. So that's the claim from the Russian side. So again, generally, I think throughout the course of this war, we've seen that, for the most part, Russia hasn't released too much information with fake or false bravado, and that I think we can say that there's some general truth behind that. Of course, you can never shoot down every missile, but you know, there's only 20 missiles being delivered, and the great majority of them get knocked down. Yeah, it'll kill someone somewhere, but it won't, certainly won't end the war. Another piece of great info from Mr. Badwolf goes as follows, quote, critical situation near Krasny Liman as Russian forces seize initiative on the front. The Russian advance particularly strong in the east. Fighting's claim it's the toughest since last October. Moscow gains advantage from failed summer offensive by Ukrainian armed forces. Russia's military-industrial complex outpaces the West in weapons production. Recent capture of a major Ukrainian stronghold in Zaporozhye is confirmed. So again, if you have to remember, the Russians were afraid they'd get blown to bits around Kharkov. If we look at the Ukrainian conflict, kind of like a banana, well, it'd be going the other way on your screen. So that's this way on your screen. No, like that? Yeah, like that on your screen. So it's kind of like a big banana, and at the top of the banana, that is where Kharkov is. And if you remember, the Ukrainians said that it was a huge thing that, you know, they beat back the Russians, right, from around Kharkov. Well, guess where they're advancing now? So as soon as the counteroffensive ended, that's also a sort of major set of news where it would seem in the north, the Ukrainians have the least amount of defenses. They have the least amount of manpower. And so not surprisingly, and especially near the Russian border, Russia seems to be pushing more towards the north there. And so that's sort of our big war news for today that I thought would be relevant to share and relevant to make a video about. Issue number 1, the cauldron in Avdeevka is happening, and Zelensky and his other gents who are in charge seem happy to absolutely repeat the same loser tactics that they used in Mariupol and in Bakhmut. Number 2, the ATACMS missiles. There's not many of them, and the Russians claim that they are obsolete and can be knocked out of the sky quite easily. And this piece number 3, that the advances on the northern front are going quite well and are not heavily, let's just say, resisted, because unfortunately there's not too many people left alive to resist them. God help us all. So, anyways, guys, I'm going to look at the chat. If you guys want to raise your hand and if you have any questions, we can talk about any topic, because I don't care. If you want to just write a message, remember, everything that you write, I'll see. And I'm probably going to see a lot of messages saying, Tim, you're an idiot. We couldn't hear your audio. Let's see. Only Richard offering some... yeah, this is insane. Another 30k to Avdeevka is sick imbecility. Or an intended crime. But for what? For what? One can make up any conspiracy explanation. Yeah. Well, again, this is one of these things where, I don't know. I don't like to get into too conspiratorial of thinking. Because sometimes people do act in a weird conspiratorial way. But I don't know. The fact is that those men are, the majority of them are facing a death sentence for no crime, and it's a real tragedy. So, but then again, hopefully, we've heard rumors again that there's been a lot of forces giving up. The question is, though, you know, at what point is the breaking point? At what point do they really just not have the men to send, or people to send? Key, he's seeing, oh, let's see, majority of, okay, that's not related. Oh, yeah, much echoing. Much echoing. How could there be an echo in this beautiful chamber that I'm in? There cannot be an echo. What, is my microphone here twice? I don't know. No, it's on there once. I don't know, man. If you're hearing an echo, that has to be some sort of other effect. I don't think it could be on my end. So anyways, guys, if you want to write any comments, write them. If you want to raise your hand and call in, then we could do a call in. We'll continue on with the show right now as we take a little bit of a look through again the world of news here that we have in in what's going on in Bakhmut. One other thing that we just shared on my channel is again that apparently they're already sending 900 U.S. troops to Israel. That means the United States is really going in on this. It's a real another front. Boy, friends, it is looking like we are getting closer to a World War III scenario. And I'd just like to mention that one thing that I didn't want to share because it was something that was like supposedly deleted. But supposedly there was a post on like the White House's Twitter that Biden was congratulating basically all like the American forces that are going in and operating in Israel on behalf of Israel, and they took it down. Oh, not good, not good, not good. Not good if you want to avoid World War III. Oh boy. Not good at all. Oh, Tim's saying, no, all good now. Only the echoes at the beginning. Maybe that had to do with the weird intro thing that I do. I don't know. Maybe that was it. But anyways, let's see. We're going to get some other news about the war here. Nah, it looks like everything is about Israel right now. And to be honest, friends, I'll say one thing. Israel as sort of a distraction, I think, has been a huge boon. I don't think that, to be honest, if it wasn't for the whole Israel thing, I really don't think Russia would have went on the offensive. I think this whole Russian counter-offensive probably wouldn't be happening if it wasn't for that. Because no matter what they say, and no matter how much, you know, people like Janet Yellen can come on and say that we can afford to fight this war, we're, you know, or what did Biden say? we're the United States for gosh dang sake, or something like that. He turned on, he went from like Delaware's Delaware politician to like 1800s coal miner or something. We're America for gosh darn sake, come on. Actually, to be honest, that's a little bit more South Park than 1800s coal miner, but that was just weird. So besides those two people, you know, it's really hard to fight a war on two fronts. Ask the Germans. And this is going nuts, especially, too, with the fact that something we don't see, and I don't also want to share too much info about this because I don't want to be gleeful about people dying, especially Americans, in any way, shape, or form. I do not want, because I am not gleeful about people dying in these wars, trust me. I don't care. Maybe it might, my desire to see Russia prevail and end this might lead one to believe that, but I don't. The bases that the U.S. has sort of set up under questionable circumstances in Syria, you know, those have been attacked, guys. Those have been attacked. And the ones in Iraq. Well, some of the ones in Iraq. I think there's a lot of bases still in Iraq. But, you know, they've been attacked. So the United States is really being forced to then finance the Ukrainian war. And it's looking like there's a more almost, I don't want to say global, but massive regional war a brewing. Because if you think about it, and again, looking on the map and our rules of geopolitics, that geography matters. And Syria, despite the fact that they all kind of border each other. Wait, did I just lie to myself? They do border. Hold on, let's see. Map of Middle East. Because I know Syria and Israel definitely border, and Syria and Iraq border, but do they all border? No, they don't. So, good. I'm glad I checked. So, Syria and Israel border. Syria and Iraq border, but Israel and Iraq don't. Okay, so that's important. You have to go through Jordan to get to the rest of Israel there. But in terms of overall the geography of things, if you look on a map like I am right now, you know, the distances between these places are huge. Despite the fact that they form a sort of contiguous arc, there is a lot of distance between these places, and there's a lot of distance in terms of, like, dead zone. Because, you know, Iraq, what is it? It's the Tigris and Euphrates rivers and kind of the area around it. What is Syria? Well, most of the people who live in Syria live around kind of Damascus. They're closer to the Mediterranean Sea. They're closer to the whole west side of the country. The east side of the country is pretty open and barren and all that other stuff. And so what do I mean by that? Is it may be in the same region, but it's really, really freaking far away. and the distance between these locations happens to be, you know, a blazing dead zone desert that's not exactly the easiest thing to cross. You know what I mean? So this is a pretty chaotic situation. And I guess we're going to be monitoring it to an extent here on the channel. But again, unlike some other people, I like to keep this to Russia-related stuff on the channel. But since there seems to be a sort of global war between the global South versus the collective West that's kind of going on in a soft World War III, that definitely involves Russia, so we have to talk about it to an extent. But I just think that that's a very interesting, and for those of us who aren't particularly happy with the direction things have gone in Washington, it is definitely going to be a big thorn in Washington's side, having to deal with being attacked in Syria, Iraq, and essentially being attacked in Israel because, you know, Israel is the United States, basically. Okay? So, very interesting there. I don't know, if you guys have any comments, please write them in the chat. If you don't, then maybe I can bail and I can go work out. Let's see. Antonio's 4 carriers out of 11. Probably another 4 not operational. So 4 out of 7, ain't that a huge portion of U.S. sea power? If you're talking about how much of the U.S. Navy has been put near Israel as a sort of show of force, yeah, it is. And one of the crazy things is I have heard over the years. Now, I obviously, like human beings, like everything, nothing lasts forever, including aircraft carriers. But I've always heard all sorts of different numbers about how many aircraft carriers the United States actually has. And so I'm not sure. I don't think that's a secret because they're so big. But let's put it this way. It's always a different number. And so I can't really tell you for sure. I've seen the number like you're saying here, 11. I've seen 11 written. I've seen 16 written. I've seen closer to 20 written by major news sources. So is it half of the U.S.'s sea power? I don't know. Maybe some of these have been decommissioned over the years. But it's a huge heck of a lot of... let me just put it this way. In terms of dollar value, that's a whole lot of boat that's sitting outside of Israel. And again, this goes back into one of these things, whether this is just like politicians are like, well, there's a problem in Israel. We need to show strength. Send the guys on the boats to just sit there and float and look powerful. Is it that? Or like some people think it's part of the grand Alex Jones style conspiracy, that they're going to sit out there and wait for the Palestinians to maybe attack them. Because remember, who has been helping out especially Hezbollah over the years and all that stuff and organizing it? That's Iran. And who has lots of weapons designed to deal with the U.S. Navy in a sort of a cheap sort of drone, or, you know, drones and missiles and all that stuff. Just throw cheap stuff at an expensive boat to sink it. That's the Iranians. So there's definitely a worry that things could go absolutely completely out of control if Iranian cheap technology is issued to, say, Hamas or Hezbollah, and they're able to actually attack this fleet, which is sort of like the shining jewel of America's Navy. So yeah, that the position of the U.S. Navy right now is very relevant. And also the less U.S. Navy there is around the Black Sea, the less likely we are to go to World War III. So I also see that as a good thing. But the more likely there is to be a huge war in the Middle East. Let's see. Oh boy, we're getting some messages and comments here. Remember, if you want to raise your hand, use the raise your hand function. You can talk to me directly. You can even tell me I'm an idiot and I'm wrong about everything, and that the reptilians and the Queen of England actually rule the world. Jade writes, I heard Iran is using Russian military airports to transfer and move weapons for the Ukraine war, Syrian war, and probably Israel. That I don't know. That's one of those sort of things, Jade, that I can't confirm or deny. But why would they need Russian military airports? You mean military airports in Syria? Because, like, the Russian military airports that are in Russia are way too far away. If you mean some sort of airstrip in Syria, maybe. That's within the realm of possibility, but I can neither confirm nor deny that. But I can just say that, yes, on the territory of Russia, that would be impossible and pointless. And on the territory of Syria, that would at least have a point to it. So, yeah. What about a Maria Zakharova's reply, which couldn't have been probably nothing more than a witty answer? I think she threw that Russia could retaliate to a stupid U.S. and EU decision to grant Russian citizens permanent stay and work, plausibly. Okay, that's about something else. Ukraine won't get near as much money from the U.S. now that we have a new House Speaker, Mike Johnson. Yeah, apparently Johnson's, from what was exposed, thanks to the alternative media. Sorry, I'm channeling Alex Jones today. I just wish I could wake up one day and have Alex Jones's voice. Just turn it on like a light switch. That'd be amazing. The guy's the best voice on earth. He can read anything and make it sound good. He could read the menu at McDonald's and it would sound amazing. You know, the fillet of fish for $2.99. It's unbelievable. Dark. The fish is so cooked it's dark. Evil fish. But anyways, about the financing of this Mike Johnson. So I saw today that, again, supposedly, according to these people who supposedly, objectively gather, the information about where, politicians get their financing from. Well, apparently Johnson's #1 biggest donor, was like the big donor, not just like one of many, was some sort of like Israeli political action committee. So, if his loyalty is bought by campaign donors, then his loyalty is going to be much stronger on the Israeli side than the Ukrainian side. So you bring up a good point, Jade. Antonios continues, I think we could later Google it. There's a page. Well, okay, that's something else. Syrian airports are blown out by Israel. Well, then if Syria's military, which is essentially, hand in hand with Russia's military there, if all their airstrips have already been hit, then I don't know. There's really not much the Russians that could do to help out in Israel. And, yeah. Plus, remember, well, the question is, what are they trying to fly in? Supplies? Because then the Iranians, I think it would just be easier for them to just fly in supplies. As long as whatever forces the U.S. has or that are allied with them in Syria can't hit some sort of civilian aircraft, I mean, the Iranians could just fly it in the good old-fashioned way over Iraq. Because if there was one thing about the wasted money and American lives that we've seen since the end of the Cold War, it was Iraq. Because, like, the second, maybe it took a couple days. Because in Afghanistan, it was pretty crazy when the U.S. forces left. It was very obvious. But in Iraq, they just kind of quietly, I think it was within a couple of weeks, they were already starting to make deals with the Russians about different stuff. And the Iraqi government, the second they still have U.S. bases there and all that, but the second they kind of felt that sort of drawdown, they were like, okay, now it's just time to just do it to whatever we are going to do. Amazing. So, good stuff. The world we live in is completely insane. And anyways, guys, I am seeing that a lot of people are watching, which is cool. Even one guy who's wearing a ninja outfit, apparently. But not seeing a lot of questions here. Not seeing a lot of comments. Let me just take one last perusal of our major news sources here. And if there's nothing worth talking about, then, yeah, I'm going to bail. So, again, we're getting more Gaza. We're getting the Turkish factor. Again, Erdogan was... made some fiery speech. He wants a ceasefire come hell or high water. Oh, here's a pretty famous picture. You guys can't see it, but I'll explain it. Hassan Nasrallah, Secretary General of Hezbollah, met last night with Secretary General of the Islamic Jihad Zaid Nakhleh and Deputy Head of the Hamas Politburo Saleh al-Aruri in Lebanon. So, there's a big meeting. However, on the wall are pictures of Ayatollah Khomeini and what's his name, Ezri, or is that not? I think that's his name. Iranian politicians. So there you go. Iran is being a lot less sneaky than they have been in the past about their support. So here we have some other information that they've been mapping where projectiles have been coming from. So apparently there are projectiles coming from at Israeli forces from within Gaza, from Lebanon, and from outside of Israel within Jordan. So they say. Interesting. Interesting stuff on the war front. More destroyed Leopard tanks. That's not surprising. Boy, if those if people say the M1 Abrams tanks showed up in Ukraine, but some say they didn't show up, that's kind of conflicting. But yeah, anyways, yeah, I don't know really what to say about that. That's kind of neither here nor there, but it's always interesting how sometimes you can read the exact opposite news. So yep. And boy, is there a lot of footage of the Israelis just shooting buildings. Okay. So, anyways, yeah. So, guys, let me just check the questions. Last questions. Is there anything? This is a Putin. Antonio continues. This is a Putin concession to Israel. He has allowed Israelis to bomb Syria in order to not escalate against the U.S. since the Syrian war, since Russia's entrance in 2015. That's within the realm of possibility. I could sort of see that because, you know, it's not worth going to World War III in the apocalypse over Syria, so I could kind of understand that. But, yeah. And supporters of Russia 2023 is sort of putting an advertisement. Stop advertising. Don't just advertise here. So, anyways, guys, I guess I'm going to hit the road then. No call-ins today. That's bad. Usually we have like 3 or 4 call-ins, but that's okay. Anyways, guys, I'm hitting the road. Talk to you later. I hope this was informative. The front, the war in Ukraine is definitely changing its dynamic. And there's a new cauldron forming. So we're going to go back into this whole cauldron mode that we've seen before. First Mariupol, then Bakhmut, and now it's going to happen yet again in Avdeevka. The question is, when do the resources and the money and the ability to fight for the Ukrainian side run out? When do they run out? That's our big question.